was 1997, a historic chess match was underway in New York. On one side, Garry Kasparov, reigning world champion and a prodigy by all standards. On the other, a machine, an IBM supercomputer called Deep Blue. No machine had ever defeated a grandmaster. Deep Blue had tried in 1996, but Kasparov walked away victorious. So next year, it was time for a rematch. Another man versus machine classic. The rematch had 6 games in total. Around 1 hour into the final one, Kasparov abruptly got up. He threw his hands in the air and walked away. And just like that, the game was over. The grandmaster had resigned. A supercomputer had beaten the reigning world chess champion. You've come a long way since then. Today, you do not need a supercomputer. Just download any chess app on your mobile phone. Chances are it can beat any grandmaster. But getting here was not easy. We know chess as a complicated and taxing game, one that needs supreme calculations. But once upon a time, it was roadside entertainment, sometimes even a hobby for kings. How did that game become modern-day chess? Who came up with it in the first place? Time for a flashback. Chess does not have a date of origin, neither does it have a creator. It emerged over many centuries through cultural exchanges. But the starting point was India. Around the 6th century, there is evidence of a popular board game, Chaturanga. The word itself is Sanskrit. You can find mentions of it in the Mahabharata. Chaturanga was actually a battle formation with 4 divisions: elephantry, chariotry, cavalry, and infantry. We know a couple of things about this game. It was played on a board with 64 squares. It was likely played in the Gupta Empire. Now, the Guptas ruled much of the Indian subcontinent. They reigned from the 4th to the 6th century. Their texts do mention Chaturanga. But the thing is, many board games existed during that time. Any one of them could be the predecessor of chess. So how do we know it was Chaturanga? Because of the pieces. Other games used identical pieces. They had the same look, the same powers and the same capabilities, but not in Chaturanga. In Chaturanga, each piece was different, the chariotry being the most powerful. Also, to win this game, you had to capture one piece, the king. Again, quite like modern chess. So most historians agree that chess evolved in the 6th century, which is around 1500 years ago. There are other theories too. Some say it's much older, maybe 5,000 years old. But do they have a case? Board games have been excavated from Lothal, a site in the Harappan civilization. But very little is known about them. So you can't really draw conclusions. Others also point to the presence of chariots. Chariot warfare emerged in the 3rd millennium BC, which is almost 5,000 years ago. By the Gupta Empire's time, chariots were gone. They were replaced by cavalry. So why did Chaturanga still use chariots? Was it a nod to the past? Or is the game actually 5,000 years old? I'm afraid historians still haven't answered that question, but the majority opinion is 1,500 years. And now we come to the expansion. What do you do if you discover a new board game? You share it with others. You use it to make new friends. And that's what Indian rulers did in the 7th century. They sent an ambassador to the Sasanian Empire in Persia, which is modern-day Iran. It was ruled by King Khosrow I. He was a big fan of art and culture. The Indian ambassador arrived at his court with plenty of gifts, and among them was Chaturanga. The game caught on well. In Persia, it was called Shatranj or Chaturang. An extra game piece was also added, the Firzan or the counselor. Now, this piece did not have any military use, but it's an example of how the game evolved. Chaturanga's expansion to the west would shape its history. But the game did move east as well. It traveled along the Silk Road to East Asia. Journeys would often last weeks and months. So the travelers needed entertainment, and what better than a portable game, one where they could pretend to be generals. Chaturanga reached China by the middle of the 8th century. From China, it went to Japan and Korea. But this journey took a lot of time, around 250 years. In this period, a different version of chess evolved, Chinese chess. Most of the rules remained the same, but some regional variations emerged, like this big horizontal block in the middle of the board. The Chinese call it the river. It gave a different dimension to the battlefield. Also, pieces did not move across squares. They moved across intersections. like the ones you see on an Excel sheet. This likely came from a famous Chinese board game called Go. That too is played on intersections. But back to Persia now. The Persians had their own names for the game pieces. The king was called Shah. And when the king was captured, they called it Shah Mat. Mat meant defeat, and in some cases even death. These words evolved as chess spread. Shah Mat became Sahmata in Arabic, Eshek Mat in French, and finally checkmate in English. The word chess also emerged similarly. The French called the game Eshek, which became chess in English. Another example is the game piece Rook, the one that looks like a castle. It came from the Persian word Ruk, meaning chariot. But how did chess go from Asia to Europe? Mostly thanks to the Arabian Empire, the caliphates that followed Prophet Muhammad. These rulers did not like gambling. It was frowned upon in Islamic law. But chess was not gambling, was it? It was based on skill and technique. Luck had nothing to do with it, so the Arab rulers patronized chess. It spread from West Asia to Northern Africa and Europe. But Arab chess was very basic. The pieces were carved from stone or clay, no designs, no ornaments, nothing fancy. All of that was banned in Islam. So chess boards between the 9th and 12th century were quite basic. You may think that's a bummer, but it helped the game grow. Anybody could make these basic boards. But the fancy ones, only the rich could. And that's where Europe comes in. The Slavic people took chess to Northern Europe and Russia. The Vikings took it to England, and they liked fancy chess. Like this board found on an island in Scotland. It dates back to the 11th or 12th century. There are 78 pieces carved from walrus ivory. Trust the Europeans to take things too far. But chess was not rapidly accepted in Europe. Sometimes there was pushback. Like in 2054, King Louis IX banned chess in France. He called it a useless and boring game. But most other rulers enjoyed it, like King Henry I of England, Alfonso the Wise of Spain, and Ivan the Terrible of Russia. All of them had a soft corner for chess. So by the 15th century, it became the royal game, a game of kings. Meanwhile, back in the home of chess, the game was still alive. The Mughals, for instance, loved it. Akbar carved chess boards on the floor of his new city, Fatehpur Sikri. He did not use chess pieces, though. He used real people to play, so the game may have moved on from India, but Indians never left it. Over the next centuries, new rules emerged. Two of them made the game more exciting. First, the counselor became the queen, arguably the most powerful piece on the board. Then the elephant became the bishop. It could now move diagonally across the board. These two changes transformed chess. Earlier, games would take hours, sometimes days to finish. Now you could win in a couple of moves. So no more trench warfare. This was blitzkrieg time. By 1835, the chessboard became standardized. It was designed and patented by an Englishman named Nathaniel Cook. Howard Staunton endorsed it. Now, he was considered the best chess player in the world, so his endorsement meant a great deal. Even today, most competitions use the Staunton design. This era of chess was dominated by Europeans, maybe even monopolized. Tournaments were held in cities like London and Prague. The winners were also European. In 1924, 15 countries gathered in Paris, again mostly European. They created a global body to govern chess, FIDE, or Fédération Internationale des Échecs. Thus, the journey from Chaturanga to chess was complete. It took decades for India to reclaim this game. This finally happened in the late 1990s and early 2000s. That's when Vishwanathan Anand became world champion. He put India back on the map. Today, Indian chess is retaking its rightful place. Later this year, an Indian prodigy will fight for the world championship. 17-year-old Gukesh. He's the youngest challenger for the title, and he represents India's ancient connection to this game. We gave the world chess, and now it's time to give them more champions.